So I am going to present our final speaker for this roundtable, Dr. Sophie Lewis, who is a writer, an independent scholar living in Philadelphia as an Anglo-Franco-German transplant. Her Marxist transfeminist essays, and I'll just include this because I like it, including viral analyses of octopus documentaries and other wannabe heterosexual televisual artifacts. And yeah, Sophie has a great piece on that called My Octopus Girlfriend that I advise you all to check out. Have been published in journals such as Paragraph Science, Feminist Theory, Dialogues in Human Geography, and magazines, by too numerous to name, but LRB, Boston Review, Harper's, to name a few, and newspapers such as the New York Times. Sophie is the author of Full Surrogacy Now, Feminism Against the Family, published by Verso in 2019, and Abolish the Family, a Manifesto for Care and Liberation, which was published by Salvage Editions in 2022, and most recently, Enemy Feminisms, which we heard about on Monday, which will be coming out in February with Haymarket Press. Okay. With the Out of the Woods Writing Collective, Sophie co-authored the collection Hope Against Hope, Writings on Ecological Crisis. So again, an overlap with the Ecologies theme. And as an editor at Blind Field Journal, Sophie helped foster communities on feminist cultural criticism. Sophie's a member of the faculty of Brooklyn Institute for Social Research, teaching courses on social theory, queer feminist politics, and anti-work philosophy, which are online and open to all. And are you still a visiting scholar at Penn?
Yes, in an unofficial, yes,
yeah,
unpaid,
so
yes, that's right.
affiliated with University of Pennsylvania Center for Research on Feminist, Queer, and Transgender Studies. And I'll switch to you, Sophie.
Thank you, Pandora. It's great to be alongside these scholars and here in general. I want to start by stating, well, it's actually restating because Virtue ended with this general topic, but it's something obvious to anyone committed to reproductive justice, namely that we're sitting right now in the heart of empire and the belly of the beast, in a country whose taxpayers, much like the taxpayers in my adoptive country, my adoptive home, the settler colonized, turtle island, the United States, we're currently directly funding an acceleration of the genocide in Palestine and gathering in an institution that invests in the infrastructure of occupation and apartheid in Palestine, and whose students have called for it to divest from its partnerships with Zionist corporations, notably Caterpillar. Reproductive justice scholars in the network ReproSist intervened in December to try to break the shameful silence on the part of many reproductive health and justice academic researchers on this subject. I have been thinking with Palestinian feminism for a long time in my work before, October 7th, 2023. In my work on abolition of the private nuclear household and children's liberation, radical kinship, and polymaternalism, as I see it, it is the limits of the family, i.e. the limits of proprietary kinship, that are touched when children hold a press conference demanding to be cared for by the world, or when someone in Gaza distributes candy to a group of children, as we've been seeing all the time on TikTok or any social media, to a group of children in the rubble saying, my children, you are all my children. And my suggestion has been that we can call this disaster polymaternalism, riffing on the concept of disaster communism, i.e. it's a form of polymaternal care born of disaster. And the suggestion here is that the fact that the bombs are falling is no reason to stop demanding a world beyond privatized care, or to stop looking for the immanent logics of care communization amid the organized abandonment, the total war, the wreckage, and the atrocity of the present. And in fact, a Palestinian woman, Noor Chantou, told me recently that all children belong to all of us was a common Palestinian saying even long before the era of the ubiquitous WCNSF, right? Wounded child, no surviving family. Many family abolitionists over the course of the past 200 years have reached for the same exact phrase. And I think we should understand this thought that all children are the children of all of us as a kind of property claim against private property. It highlights the sense in which the family is a scarcity-based way of organizing care. And we can think of it in the context of Gaza as a distillation of a form of family abolition arising from unthinkable catastrophe. And so this is obviously family abolition qua survival strategy. In other words, it's an adaptive measure, to be sure. And it perhaps only means that all children here are everyone's only temporarily, i.e. until things go back to a dreamed of normal. But it is nevertheless a standpoint that gives rise to a substantive, albeit tragically necessitated, deprivatization of care. The horizon of abolition of the family is inherently decolonial and anti-genocidal because its fundamental hope is that the more we gradually remove the pressures and burdens that capitalism places on the private household, the more the logic of us and them starts to collapse altogether. The logic of us for us and them for themselves has to become everyone for everyone. To quote the demand of the relatives of the Israeli hostages, which was brought to the Knesset on October 28th, which I am not saying was in and of itself some kind of revolutionary demand. You recall what the families asked was that the thousands of Palestinian prisoners, pre-existing thousands in Israeli jails, be released in exchange for the, at that time, 240 kidnapped by Hamas. What I'm saying about this is that they were thus mobilizing the logic of familism and the moral authority of the family, in a sense, against the familism of the nation state. And if we follow the logic of this movement of, real families against the family, to continue this dialectic vein, we necessarily see the sort of what others have also called the imminent sort of kernel of abolitionism in there, this policy of everyone for everyone requiring the repossession and sharing of the land, of everything, i.e. not just everyone for everyone, but everything for everyone. And that is quite simply what the still living dream of communization in this, what that means, what my politics certainly reduces to. And in the service of that same politics, as some of you know already, there are two interconnected senses, descriptive and prescriptive, of the phrase full surrogacy now. The title of my book, published in 2019, as Pandora said. So firstly, it is a descriptive observation because the geography of planetary capitalist life-making bespeaks a dystopian form of surrogation, i.e. another term for this kind of surrogation is reproductive stratification. Right now, that's the now part. Today, the bodily labors of the many are insourced, vacuumed up in the service of the households and bodies of the few. But there is also a prescriptive sense of the phrase, the utopian form of full surrogacy, when raised as a kind of demand, entails that we all actualize the already immanent fact that we are the makers of one another. And we actualize it by learning to act like it. So this is another way of saying that all reproduction is assisted, and the challenge is to rise to that understanding to rise to the to give it a meaning sort of worthy of its name. Children are no one's property, nor are they extensions of anybody's self, notwithstanding proprietary kinship's construction of them that way. So thus I'm speculating that the communization of care can be approached via the impossibility of the concept of surrogacy in a context where private property had been abolished, right? It's an impossible concept in that sense. The contemporary gestational, industry harbors possible openings for an insurrection of paid and unpaid gestators, because paid or unpaid human gestational labor is work under capitalism that gestators themselves can seek to redistribute, reorganize, reduce, and steal back from capitalism. Yeah, I realize this is rushed because we've been asked to contribute 10 minutes. I know that's dense. But I've been writing about gestational labor and the challenge of thinking about gestational labor and other forms of life-making labor from an anti-work Marxist perspective for over a decade now. Here are a couple of examples of things I've attempted to contribute to conversations both inside and outside of academia around the agonism and productivity of gestation. I haven't actually included here the stuff I've written about ectogenesis and biobags, or the stuff that I've written about pregnancy and transfeminist literary fiction, and in the context of a feminism against cisness. There's also these peer-reviewed articles Pandora mentioned where I've written about international solidarity in reproductive justice, gender-inclusive polymaternalism, and cyborg uterine geographies. But tomorrow in the workshop with Luisa Prado, in one of the pieces that participants have been asked to read, there's my article on mothering against motherhood, xeno-hospitality, and the concept of the mom raid, the mom raid in an American spelling. And in June 2022, immediately after the fall of Roe versus Wade, I theorized, re-upped my attempt to account for the manufacture of new human beings, right, i.e. Anthrogenesis, from this perspective of an autonomist, i.e. anti-work, i.e. freedom-oriented Marxism of the school of Kathy Weeks. And I depart from the ethical view that forcing someone to continue a pregnancy, even for a second, longer than that person wants to be pregnant, is a form of violence far worse than the violence of feticide. Capitalist liberal democracy has, of course, always historically relied on forced labor, even as it has officially repudiated forced labor ethically. And in fact, that's the secret, I think, of capitalist social reproduction, the illusion of the fact that forced labor remains so central, even after the partial abolition of slavery many years ago, right? Forced gestating is no doubt the most physiologically invasive stratum of people's coercion into the labor of care. I think I'm saying that the structure of capitalism's repro-social order boils down to forced care. And there are more and more of us naming the so-called pro-life camp as crusaders for forced care labor. As we advance the right not to be pregnant and the freedom not to gestate involuntarily, even as we advance the right to gestate, right? That's the other part of reproductive justice's dialectic. My personal view is that we make a mistake when we contradict point blank the pro-life accusation that there is killing involved. Rather than squaring our acts of killing away according to a moral calculus, or pretending that we aren't really killing when we kill an embryo or a fetus. I think feminists can subscribe, should subscribe with Donna Haraway to the ethical imperative, thou shalt not make killable. And this might seem counterintuitive in the context of an argument in favor of abortion as killing, but the distinction between making fetuses killable and making it easier and stigma-free for people to make the decision to commit that feticide is significant. It's not about a making killable, it's about a freedom to make that decision. The former refers to casting something out of the sphere of the grievable, thanks to a tidy and final verdict on the permissibility of systematically sacrificing its life to some greater cause. You know, and we know that people who abort fetuses can and often do grieve the proto-person involved. But the clump of cells argument is not much to my taste. Fetuses should not be killable, in my view, no more so than elephants or expanding access to the means of feticide, however, does not preclude acknowledging the violence. It does not require us to weigh beings in the scales or square death away. It simply means trust gestators. So I'll end by reciting a plea for gestational justice I articulated in 2017 in my essay Amniotechnics, which became the final chapter of Full Surrogacy Now, and I call Amniotechnics the art of holding and caring even while being ripped into at the same time as being held. Amniotechnics is protecting water and protecting people from water in the spirit of full surrogacy. I want a generalized praxis of this, which doesn't forget the importance of holding mothers and thwarted mothers, and yes, even wannabe single fathers afloat in the juice. Breathing but hydrated, well-watered but dry. Let us assume that it is possible for any of us to learn that it is the holders, not the delusional authors, self-replicators and patenters who truly people the world. Water management may sound unexciting, but I suspect it contains secrets to the kin-making practices of the future. Just as with water, we have consented too much to the privatization of kin-making. Surrogates to the front, right? So by surrogates, to repeat, I mean all those comradely motherers, right? Motherers against motherhood, gestators, midwives, and other sundry interveners in the more slippery moments of social reproduction, those who repair boats, swim across borders, blockade lake-threatening pipelines, carry, miscarry. We can all learn to help plan, mitigate, interrupt, suffer, and recognize this amniotic violence without romanticizing it. Let's think how we can assist in this regenerative wet wrestling, sharing out its burden. Okay, thank you.